Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Cherkis, and tonight we are going to be discussing the construction of the Hoover Dam alongside my fellow teammates Jake Bavaro and Steve Barbero. So to start off, the co-founding factors interest regarding the project. So in terms of initiating the project, us as a group, so we jointly found it appealing to take on a rather retrospective point of view, as if we were constructing the dams ourselves, so going back in time, early 30s forward. As explained further in the project outline, we've also jointly agreed that the Hoover Dam was rather significant for the southern Pacific cities located in the United States, and we deemed it a power highway to electrically fuel these cities. So based on our values regarding the potential negative impacts of the environment, this is probably one of the biggest obstacles we face besides worker casualty, is we pretty much fall in the ballpark of a conservative point of view. You know, we're more concerned with the industries being successful as opposed to harmful effects seen by the environment later on. Next. So the first document I'm going to be going over that I put in the full outline is the stakeholder register. And this document is rather significant because it allows us to hold the third parties that are involved both directly and via indirectly accountable. So if you take, for example, our subcontractor, Malloy Construction Company, those are going to be our subcontractors, and figures like Jake Bavaro, myself, Steve Barbero, COO, project sponsor, CFO. You get the idea, you get the gist. We're directly involved, so we're internal operations, and pretty much our main competitor is 6 companies because they were the ones that originally constructed the Hoover Dam, and they consisted of, quote unquote, obviously 6 companies, which would be Utah Construction, Morrison Knudsen, Kaiser, and you get the gist. So they would be our competitors. And then last but not least, the 2 major states that are involved, well, we're working alongside with them as well, being Nevada and Arizona. So we would be in rather close contact with both political parties. Next. Okay, so secondly, we have the stakeholder strategy. And without further ado, this is pretty much a subsidiary to that of the stakeholder register. So it pretty much divides what we already had in the stakeholder register and categorizes these third parties and parties of interest within the company based on interest and power. So obviously, since we're internal management, we're making, the big decisions to go forward. We would have a rather high interest in the project as well as high authority / AKA power. On the other hand, so 6 companies like Utah Construction, a lot of the big figureheads over there, Bob Anderson, Marlene Puckett, they would have high interest, but they wouldn't have the level of authority we do because they're not running the project, they're running their own project. But they would want to know what we're doing, so if they could, make something more cost efficient or time efficient, beat us out to getting the contract, which is hence the end goal that we're trying to get at. Next. So we have the next document I came up with, and the document as a whole is earned value management. So this pretty much depicts an amortization schedule regarding what we did were semi-annual payments for the entire construction of the Hoover Dam. And what I did was I pretty much broke it down between labor, electrical, environmental, and safety. We found that these are the most significant costs that, would give us the light at the end of the road to finishing this project. So if you look at the leftmost column, that's the total cost for an entire yearly basis. And when I ran the numbers down, that tallies to 150 million, which obviously makes sense because in our outline, we specified that this project should take roughly at most 5 years or completed within the 5th year at a total of 750 million. So the percent of complete, I know it says 4.322%, all those going down. Those are amortized based on the total percentage for each group. So that would be 40%, 25%, 15%, and 20% accordingly. Thank you.
All right. So as far as the project management plan, We have our clear project sponsor, or the client, as we may call it. In our case, is the U.S. government. The U.S. government, specifically Congress, has created a subcommittee that has determined that they want to create the Hoover Dam. Now, given the size and the importance of the project, we've determined that the lower and middle managers in charge of their respective pieces of the project will meet on a monthly basis to essentially go over progress, where we are with completion time, any safety or environmental issues, which have been already determined by the government as key areas that they want to remain focused on, and essentially just stay up to date on where we are with the key issues of the project. And it's also important to note that while we'll be having monthly meetings, the client or the project sponsor will have quarterly meetings where essentially we will go to the subcommittee and keep them up to date on everything I just said, such as the budget, completion time, safety issues, and environmental issues. Obviously, this could be amended at the discretion of the project manager, where if at one of our monthly meetings we determine that something catastrophic has happened, we can of course not have to wait until the quarterly meeting with the project sponsor, and we can just go to them immediately if we determine that it's necessary. So as far as the scope statement, we have been made aware by the U.S. subcommittee in charge of this project that the main goal of this project is a job-creating project. Obviously, this is not the only goal of the project. We're not just digging holes in the desert and filling them back up. There is an end goal as far as construction is concerned, which is the Hoover Dam, obviously. There's also a second component to the Hoover Dam, which is the hydroelectric electricity plant, which will essentially use the flow of water from the dam to produce electricity for commercial sale, which will eventually recoup the cost of the construction of the dam and eventually make the government money. Now, as far as the completion of the project is concerned, that's our main component. We're just constructing the dam, and then we essentially are going to hand it off to the U.S. government. We've agreed amongst ourselves and the project sponsor that prior to that handoff stage, a structural engineer will be brought in, and he will assess the quality of the dam. And if we rank over a certain rating, which has been pre-agreed upon in our contract, then completion will be made, and we'll hand off the dam to the U.S. government. And as far as our work breakdown structure, there are 7 major components that, of course, are comprised of multiple subcomponents, but I'll just be focusing on the main components here. So the first one is our pre-plan and design phase, which essentially what that is, before we even start putting anything together or getting the site ready for construction, we're essentially going to meet with the architects and plan everything out. What materials are we going to need? What's the time frame looking like? Can it, be done within the parameters that have been set forth? Basically, just getting ourselves ready for construction. Now, after that phase is completed, we'll move into the demolition/excavation stage, which is essentially getting the site ready for use. As you'll see in the following slides, pictures of the site pre and post construction. Pre-construction, you can't really just show up and start building what could be the largest dam in the United States. Roads will have to be constructed for the heavy machinery, for the concrete pours to come in, and also to maintain safety. Obviously, we can't have construction workers scaling the sides of mountains trying to pour concrete. And on that, we'll move into the safety implementation stage, which is essentially the pre-construction stage of, okay, the site's ready for use. Before we start filling it with workers or employees, we need to make sure they're going to remain safe and hopefully keep safety as the #1 priority here next to actually constructing the dam. After that, we'll move into the environmental impact stage, which will essentially bring in a private analyst or environmental